do. I've known a lot of leaders that struggle with that imposter syndrome. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes because you get to a place and that inner voice, that 8-year-old is telling you, you're not good enough. You're not smart
Yeah.
enough for this. You really shouldn't be here. I don't know why anybody's listening to you, or
Hmm.
whatever. And so to have that emotional maturity, I love what you said about the Myers-Briggs, even, tying in all these threads, because I think sometimes we can just let that define us.
Did you know an 8-year-old ruled the world?
Did not know that. That is,
A lot of 8-year-olds are ruling the world, right? And sometimes they rule our lives. And the gist of this blog is the fact that a guy named Lou Tice wrote several years ago, most of your beliefs about yourself were formed before you had any idea what was happening. Just his thoughts on this very thing. It was really interesting because he talks about self-talk, and a lot of the self-talk that we have, at least, and particularly negative self-talk, is from something we thought about ourselves, or somebody said to us back in elementary school or junior high or something. So this jerk tells us we're not any good at anything, or we tell ourselves that we're a jerk and we can't do anything. I don't know how many years I spent in my life thinking I can't do English. I can't, I don't get this grammar stuff. Well, as an adult, I did learn English. I did learn to do a lot of things, but a lot of people are hindered how they understood things about themselves, about their abilities, their skills, what they couldn't do while they were still a child, and carry those into adulthood. And you hear them all the time. I'm a shy person. I'm this, I'm that. And I'm of the belief that that's not always true. And there's a lot of people that said, well, if you would have known me when I was in high school or even in college, you would have thought I was shy. And now they're this speaker, you know, and they've had to overcome, a lot of their own self-image in order to get there. And I think that a whole lot of us are being ruled by an 8-year-old. Basically, we're being ruled by the self-talk that we told ourselves back when we really weren't capable. We weren't adults. If somebody came into your office right now and started telling you, you can't do this, you can't do that, you don't, whatever, and they're talking, they're an 8-year-old and they're telling you can't do these things, and you go like, what? Yeah, sure, I can do those things. Well, that's just the kind of the joke about this, and the reality is that those traits aren't necessarily set in stone. I've also started thinking about things like Myers-Briggs. I've always been a little bit reluctant about Myers-Briggs and things along that line. But this also makes me think that sometimes we can start thinking of ourselves as a certain way. I am this. And people hear what we are and they interact with us in that way. But is that set in stone? Is that really who you are? Particularly if it's in some way self-limiting, or are you sometimes that way, or do you prefer to be that way? Are you incapable of changing that? We're now going into that's into behavioral study that talks about what impact the past has on us, and can we reframe and change the past. Sure, these things happened to us in the past, and they weren't good, and we've been victimized. But can we take the past, reframe it, and make a different future that is a good outcome from those bad things? In other words, change the impact of what that means. We all have selective histories. There's a few things that we maybe remember about the past, some things that we repeat often because they may be humorous or they may be tragic or whatever. And we make those things kind of a focus and a part of us. And we can take those things and frame them into, good things, things that help us, or we can take and frame those things into excuses and victimization where I'm this way because of, rather than I am this way in spite of. You know, these things made me a better person. They weren't good things that happened to me, but I'm more sensitive to the to things that are around me. I had a sister who was mentally slow. People, other kids harassed her and told her that she was retarded. She was slow, but she was not retarded, as we usually use that word. And certainly it was cruel to her. And I used to beat up other kids, for saying that to my sister. I wouldn't let them say that. Um, the fact that she went through that as a teenager, I went to um, these association of, it was ARC, retired children, not a very noble name in the way that we look at things now, but it was a group that was organized so that people who were mentally slow or retarded could have social interactions. And I went to those things and I danced with the girls. I talked to the kids, stuff like that, to kind of normalize and provide a sense of acceptance of them. That's part of my past. And so I have a tender heart towards those things. Sure, it wasn't good for my sister. It wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for me to beat up kids, but that's, uh, you know, that's part of my past. One of the things that I choose to, recreate in my mind. So, anyways, what's your
We might
thoughts?
have to we might have to label this episode "Mark Beats Up Kids."
Yeah. Hey,
No, there's a
it
lot. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it made me strong physically. It made me fast at catching kids. I'm probably healthier today just because of that.
Because of that.
So when your kid goes up beating up other kids and chasing kids down, just say, "Go for it, son."
Oh man, no, I gotta beat up my son every once in a while and show him, anyway. Uh, no, just
That'd be
all in.
tough.
But this is a very good topic. This is a very important topic for me personally. I think I've been thinking a lot about this, and another episode that we'll be doing on the Johnny Random Show kind of is sort of came from this. I think actually you sparked the idea here, so this has sparked another whole conversation on for me. But a couple things as you were talking there is, have you seen? Did you see Inside Out 2?
I have not.
Or
I've heard a lot about it. I've read some
Okay,
reviews.
yeah, we talked about it a little bit, but as this topic reminds me of that so much, and for those of you who haven't seen it, but maybe know a little bit about what's going on, there's these different characters and different emotions inside this little girl's head, and you see inside her head, they're talking, having that internal dialogue, and she's doing those actions, and anger will take over, and then sadness and
Mhm.
joy and all the different emotions and stuff, but in this second one, I don't remember the first one very well, but in the second one, there's something that comes up out, and it's like my self identity. I'm a good person, is what
Yeah.
it said. That's
Yeah.
the core memory, and I think that's what this is talking about. It's like we develop at a very young age a sense of self. And in the movie, as it progresses, that is replaced with I'm not good enough. That's what the
Mm.
inner voice, central core, whatever thing said. And so she starts acting out and doing things in the real world based
Mhm.
on this like thing. And then the main character, Joy, she has to come in and kind of replace that with I'm a good person, get back to that. And it ties in, her maturity of I'm a good person, but I also have done, terrible things to some people sometimes, and I'm sorry and forgiveness and all those different things. It's a very good movie. But I think that's talking about, I think sometimes we get stuck in that, what that 8-year-old voice tells us, and I've seen a
Mm.
lot of people with a lot of emotional trauma and mental and abuse that have this voice it constantly telling them you're not good enough,
Mhm.
you're fat,
Yeah.
you're stupid, you're dumb, you're whatever. And it's not, it is it follows you into adulthood, and I think that those things can change the trajectory for people. And I think it is important, and I think it's a very great framing, of an 8-year-old child in the workplace, because
Mhm.
I think that's so true. I think these things that we tell ourselves, and then just from my own personal experience, I grew up, number six of seven kids, and I was, there was the smart one, there was the good at computers, and then there was the good at fixing stuff, and then I was the runt, I was sickly. I was like, I had comedy was my only game. You know what I mean? I had to be funny to survive, like that was my survival mechanism. But then when I was about 14, and I was terrible at school. I just decided, okay, I want to make movies. Like I want to be a filmmaker. And
Mhm.
I don't remember who it was that told me. It was probably mom. Just was like, hey, if you want to make films or movies, you're gonna have to like write scripts. So you're gonna need English. And
Mhm.
in order to make good movies and sci-fi stuff, if you want to do anything with that, you got to know history and science and all these different topics. And she made it real. Like, oh, all this stuff that I don't care about actually be useful for me to make a lot of money and live my dream. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So I got really serious about school. And then when I went into the military, I had that kind of same thing again. I didn't really like the sciences that much. And but I ended up working in the laboratory, which is very detail oriented. It's very SOP, very by the book processes. And I'm very big picture thinker, but it taught
Mhm.
me the value of a detailed process, controlling for outcomes, QCing, making sure your quality control mechanism in place, making sure you're not getting false positives, what all these things mean. And then now to be doing management things, having that grounding in something hard science, it's like a
Mhm. Yeah,
multidisciplinary mindset,
great.
and it's so important. And I think it's helped me in a lot of ways. And I do have that. I don't struggle with the imposter syndrome, which I think a lot of leaders do. I've known a lot of leaders that struggle with that imposter syndrome. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes because you get to a place and that inner voice, that 8-year-old is telling you, you're not good enough. You're not smart
Yeah.
enough for this. You really shouldn't be here. I don't know why anybody's listening to you, or
Mhm.
whatever. And so to have that emotional maturity, I love what you said about the Myers-Briggs, even, tying in all these threads, because I think sometimes we can just let that define us and we get stuck and we're not able to emotionally mature. And
Mhm.
so my kind of final thought, cap on all of this is to be emotionally mature, to challenge yourself, to do hard things, and to
Mhm.
understand the why behind things will
Yeah.
really help you not struggle with that imposter syndrome as much. And to change that inner dialogue is a key and
Yeah.
important
It's a
psychological.
it's a growth mindset. It says, okay, I can't do this now, but doesn't mean I can't do it. I may need, coaching. I'm capable of learning, handling these things. It says I'm willing to try, and I may not be good at it. And anytime you try something new, you are not good at it. We
Right.
talk about change management and getting people, to change. Nobody likes change. I like change, but a lot of people don't like change because it
Right.
means they have to change and they're not going to be good at what they're trying. You never learn to skate if you're not willing to fall. And
Right.
you need to make it safe for people to try things and to fall. Give them parameters and safeties and guardrails and training wheels, whatever, you know, but we've got to help people to learn to struggle and to fail, but fail forward. They're further than they were before and understand this is just part of it and how
Right.
to build systems and guidance where people can understand how to fail. I want to say something too before we get off this topic is it's not to deny the past where you failed. I have wept over things that I've done. I had grief over this, grieved over the things that I've done, in my past. They're part of my past. And there are failures, and there's things that you've done wrong and failed at, and those kinds of things. It's not denial of those things. It is accepting that, you've done these things, but you are not going to be defined by those things. You're trying to do, better as well. So there's a lot behind this. It's very rich, and I've enjoyed this discussion.
Good insights, good insights. And just when, the overused saying of like most successful people have failed, 10 times before they succeed and have a successful business. I think that's
Hmm.
true. And I
Yeah.
think it's even
Oh,
more
yeah.
true for people in society today's where we don't let our kids fail. We don't let our kids, see any kind of success of any kind of failures through life. And then you get into the workplace and you fail and you fail, but that's okay, and it's okay to dust yourself off and keep
Oh, yeah.
trying and
Yeah,
not be scared of that failure. Yeah.
that's true.